Hi, I want to talk about reverse sanctions or how sanctions destroy domestic capitalism, domestic businesses, domestic small businesses and manufacturing, and why there will be a backlash, why the elite might get killed or get thrown into the prison. Well, if somebody was looking at the United States and the stuff it's doing, and this person was an alien, from out of solar system, and he was just kind of looking at the trends of the directions that the bourgeoisie or elite in the United States are taking us there. He would come to completely different conclusions. Uh, well, many companies and also many departments in U.S. They just go by every quarter, and they look at what's happening economically and then plan for the next quarter. But uh, that's not how economies grow or diminish. It's more like a 10 year or 5 years span of time. Well, some countries Russians or China, Iran has, they have like economic 5 year plans, something like that. And where I think our economy in United States is going, it is going to become like North Korea 10 years ago. It's becoming extreme centralization in some industries or some sectors like banking, and then we have the huge mass of people that are they're like proletariat, and that's a Soviet term, means like you are just a serf, or just somebody who's wage earner, something like that. Well, uh, there was an incident a while ago. Uh, there was a scientist. His name was Tesla, and he came up with new technologies that uh, were alternating current. Well, he's alternating current, but his other inventions for generating electricity, they came with very stiff resistance. He had also discovered anti-gravity, but finally the CIA or government came in and kind of confiscated his papers, and they didn't want to make many of these devices. But the tendency is that new technological innovations, they they make it possible to generate energy, generate electricity, generate goods very cheaply, very huge quantities, and also the other thing is that it makes labor-saving devices, and also because all the products become very cheap and available, then there is a tendency in populations and people to demand more from a product. Uh, or it's like a way for things to grow and become more advanced as per need. Well, this is not something that the already established companies, like big companies, they don't want to invest in new innovation, new technology, because it threatens the market that is already there for them, that they could easily, make product or change the product a little bit, and then tap into that market. But this is completely opposite of what the consumer want, or what the many people outside of the United States, also many here, would want. You don't want to buy the same old product that you were buying 10 years ago, but pay like another 30% more for it. You don't want that. Yeah, but that's exactly what the big companies want. They want to just tap into the existing markets. And in the United States, the big corporations, they have a lot of say so in government policies. For example, I heard that the U.S. Copper mining company that had interest in Chile petitioned the government to overthrow the Chilean government. I have to check that, but I think that was the reason the U.S. government went ahead and overthrew a foreign government. But I mean, this is just a very simple example, but their oil companies, their banks, they have too much influence, too much control over what goes on in the policy, foreign policy, or economic policy, or even monetary policy. And these are toxic for capitalism itself. It's toxic because many of these philosophies or ideas, they belong to ages bygone, or they are desires of elite to just keep going and doing the same thing and getting more money for it, or expanding markets without offering anything new. And then in the last, I don't know, 20, 30 years, the American government has gotten also into the business of sanctioning many companies, many countries, also doing stuff that damages small businesses. Well, there is another motivation for United States to wage war and sanctions on many other foreign countries, is the Israeli or Zionist influence that they have in the U.S. Political elite. Many of them, they cannot get elected. They have to get the little okay from Bibi, and so they've been pursuing many Muslim countries. They have ruined several Muslim countries. They ruined and killed many Afghanis, many Iraqis, many Libyans, many Syrians, and this insidious internal influence that the Jews have on the U.S. government is so destructive, and it's also difficult because many foreign countries, they don't perceive that they need to confront Israel directly. But they go around and they are confronted with U.S., which has bigger military. But I think this era is going to come to an end for several reasons. That the U.S. just has sanctioned so many countries that just capitalism or international capitalism has really moved on outside of their influence, outside of their markets, and it really doesn't matter anymore. But I think we are going to come to an era where many foreign countries like Iran, China, the Russians, they're going to be constantly irritated, or they have this constant irritation with the United States, and their ships harassing commercial vessels, or patrolling portions like islands or waterways that really doesn't belong to them, belongs to like Iran or China or belongs to the Russians or and there will be naval confrontations. I do think that many U.S. ships, even warships, they will get hit, and I don't know. I think Iran has the technology to EMP the ships, EMP U.S. ships, and then board on them and arrest everybody on ship and take them to prison. But I think that for Iran and also China, we need to build, large number of prisons in like areas in the country uh, that are undeveloped, like middle of nowhere in Saharas we have, and turn them into work camps. Uh, Send oh, American soldiers and mercenaries there. They can work, or we could even have like a concentration camp and make these people productive, allow them to bring in money from relatives or friends, and also trade in them. Uh, I had an idea of inviting many of the American elites, bankers, like a little show that hey, you're coming in and you're going to invest. And there's all these returns, like a like a investment club, and then arrest all of them, send them all to prison. There will be the elites of the country, and they're going to be a cash source. Their relatives, their banker friends will be writing checks for them to make sure they're safe, and they'll generate income for us. These animosities, this warfare is not going to end. It has been going on for 20 years, 40 years, as I see it, because I was here since 78. But the number of the people that the Americans and Israelis have, that they're doing all this stuff that's very destructive, is not very much. They can be arrested either on their ships or tracked, and then it's okay to go a step further. Well, the U.S. has been engaging in extrajudicial killings of many foreigners. One example would be the killing of Sardar Soleimani, but we can do the same. We can, but we don't have to kill them. They are useful. They can work. They can do their jail time. If an Iranian of a very good family and great wealth was doing all these economic crimes, he would end up in jail. So what's the wrong with tracking the American elites, Israeli elites, Zionists, and grabbing them when possible, and putting them in prison or making a concentration camp for them? Uh, then also there are many ways that a country, even a country like United States, that has done all these rotten things, can bring back their manufacturing and become energy independent. Uh, I just know a couple of examples. Is that there is robotics and AI coming in. It's just like free labor. They can use them to manufacture any kind of goods. There is the solar and alternative energies are they are very mature market, and they can tap into that. They could use their money internally, pay their own workers much better, so the money comes in as wages and is spent in a better way inside the country rather than be squandered in financial crimes. They could tax the derivative market. They can tax the options market or many financial transactions which are basically gambling. They could tax them, and that would generate a lot of money, and that money can be then reinvested differently. Another thing that the Americans can do is set up shop to, for example, say you walk into a company store and there is 500 items starting with food and cosmetics that you would need, a population would need to support themselves, and produce them or set up companies to just produce them internally. So regardless of what happens, there is those goods are available, and also not to harass other manufacturers. Well, the cost of manufacturing has collapsed so much. There is a lot of stuff one can do. But for foreign governments, foreign populations, uh, the American government and many of their corporations are nothing but a menace. The endless harassment, sanctions, and military confrontations, and they've been playing this game of brinksmanship with anybody: China, Iran, Russians, Venezuela. One of these days, this brinksmanship will just end up in the Americans ending up in the brink, because somebody's going to just get tired of it. Just also, the America's military is very much an aging and ineffective military. It really will not be able to fight a naval war with even Iran or Venezuela. I don't know. Uh, the, at this time, the sanctions are only helping other countries. They're ruining U.S. businesses. Another thing that has ruined the U.S. internal businesses are these very heavy-handed policies with immigration and you know, going across the border. Well, I was talking to someone, kind of important, influential person, and he was telling me he had trouble with ICE, which is like some kind of immigration. They are harassing visitors and tourists. Many foreigners are really afraid of the United States really coming here and doing business, or even coming here to go to Disney. These behaviors damage foreign investments, real foreign investment, not in the stocks, but somebody coming in and buying a house, or going to school, or things that common people do, or coming in, taking the kids to Disney, or using airlines, because there's so much BS going on with the internal policing. Well, this place is becoming like a communist state, like North Korea, and they're actually shooting themselves in the foot. It's okay. they deserve it. They don't deserve what's already here, technologically, or U.S. is going to sink into irrelevance. It's just going to be another one of those like communist state that some people go there for manufacturing, or to get cheap loans and stuff like that, and they have friends with the government officials, but they don't really want to hang around there. I think that there's going to be an influx of foreign born, but they're here domestically, like Iranians and Chinese businessmen, or Korean businessmen, or Armenian, or that they are already here. They have their kind of station, but they have ties to foreign places, and things are progressing economically and socially much better outside. So I mean, there's going to be a net outflow of these businesses and persons, and I think that the international capitalism is just going to move on and leave this place behind. Well, which is okay. Another thing that's troubling with the Americans, they are very racist. They don't intermarry and commingle with other races. Internally, they have like disparate population. They have blacks and Spanish, and there's no internal cohesion, internal, many countries, for example, in France or in even England, there is several races, and they intermarry and they merge. It's really not something that's happening here. Many of U.S. states are really, really white races, and I don't know in the future if they're gonna become a different country of their own. I think that New England has a big talent for becoming a totally white set of states, like the original jackasses that sea pirates that established here. They're gonna become like this new Serbia, something like that. And well, then how about places like Texas? California can become a new state, new sovereign state. We probably will be so much better off. Another trend that I see is going to happen is that many white male, they're going to move out of big cities. I don't know about the women. Women tend to, they're more like a hen type of, you know. Once they get a job and there's money and they have a house or something, they don't want to really move that around too much. They don't care about the expenses. But a white male, they're more mobile, and they're gonna migrate out into small towns, or they're gonna migrate. For example, in California, many whites, they're either gay or a drug addict or homeless, making $500 by the freeway. I think they could spend that money a lot better in San Francisco or places like that. There's gonna be like a outflux of these people, which is good riddance. But so the internal real estate in big cities, the price is gonna collapse, because the population itself that gave rise to these all these buildings and houses is gonna move out or ship out, and we're gonna be left with like a empty shell. Uh, but this empty shell will be also stuck with many laws and regulations and systems that were put in place like in the 50s or 60s by these groups, and then when they leave, it's just gonna be a huge mess because imagine you live in a place, you're like a black guy living living in a society or a superstructure, a racist race made like 60 years ago. Nothing seems to work for you. Nothing, the jobs, everything is kind of, there's a mismatch because the population that's here has no desire for these structures, either political or economic. Well, I was watching TV that, like in some demonstrations, uh, people were toppling monuments because the monuments represent like racist Confederate heroes. Well, are they my heroes? No, they're not. And so this realization is going to hit. But the news here, they kind of look at it and it looks very strange to them that somebody would go and topple Confederate monuments. But there is always an underlying economic and social shifts that have happened, and it's quite strange. Another thing that I kind of took notice. Well, I am an actor. I've been played in several movies, and I used to go to the AMC. Well, AMC is just one chain. There's many other cinemas, and I was planning to go to see another movie. I was kind of checking them out. I go by Anaheim. I think it's Anaheim. Uh, there is a nice chain there, and then I went there a few months ago, and the place completely shut down. And you know, many of the movies that were being shown in there, they are like repeat productions of Hollywood. My friend, William, he passed away. He was saying that Hollywood loses money on 9 out of 10 of the films they make internally inside the United States because the people here, they have changed so much. They don't really identify, for example, with Rambo. You know, they identify more with people who are like have gone to all these foreign wars and they're really mental here and they kill a bunch of people. But the movies that they were showing, there was a huge disconnect with the population, and then now they're all closed, and it seems like there are a huge number of companies or structures in many forms that just completely disconnected. Well, I had another video, was called Singularity and Zombies. Well, right now, many analysts, like I was listening to Gregory Mannarino, he was talking about that 41% of US businesses have shut down, or the businesses that were advertising Yelp, which is a really good indication that many smaller business or even bigger businesses that really are disconnected from reality. They were zombie companies to begin with, and they're already dead and gone. And then I don't know. We are in a, I think we are in an era where the culture is going to also completely change because the population has aged and changed in so many ways, and also because the government or big companies have done so many stupid things, and now we are stuck with all this debt and all these companies and buildings and practices that we don't know what to do with all this. They are not us. They don't represent us, or they're not making products or doing things that I would shell out money to buy those products or do those things. I mean, I say some of this stuff, and I think, who's gonna even listen to me? But then I put out my video, and about like 5, 10 days later, I hear from all these analysts. They also do research, and they come in and they look at this stuff, and I see they have all taken these material and rebranded it, and they're saying the exact same thing. I mean, I might sound very strange, but my stuff is really researched and looking at things as they are deeply, and I think that the more perceptive portion of the U.S. media is slowly coming around and rediscovering or grabbing this material. I was looking at I think it was LinkedIn or some other thing about who is watching my stuff, who is my audience, who shows interest in these things, because my material is not easy. You need to really be smart, have very good education, and not to live under delusions. And I noticed that many of these analysts, even mainstream media, like I was looking at the people who have come in, and I saw that there were some from media, from NBC, from CNN, there were some from Fox, I think so, and I do see a lot of rebranding, that somebody is doing research also, and they're taking the material and reformulating it and then putting it out, and that's fine with me. I like to see my spiritual and scientific, my knowledge and my art to go many places. I don't think I really mind people benefiting from it. It's okay. At some point, I will get a medal somewhere. That's a very strange concept, because I'm like a real black sheep, and everybody just kind of comes and uses it and then forget about him. Well, I think that the things have changed so much, and there's going to be a cultural and maybe even spiritual change in society. It is going to become completely different. Well, another group that watches my stuff, and I think they use it. I think the veterans and also military personnel, they watch and use this material. I also think many clergy, Muslim clergy, and even Christian clergies, they use this stuff, or they know about it. I put out some material about my mediumistic experiences as a medium, and I hear it here and there from many Christian women, something like that. Uh, uh, Another thing that's happening is like a current, that's underlying current, and I've been talking about this. It's called extreme forms of democracy, which is now possible by because the the email and authentication systems are so advanced now. Well, I heard this from Palestinian that they plan to have elections, but these elections, because of physical barriers Israel has constructed, is not going to be physical, but it's going to be online, and they're going to authenticate who is the Palestinian, real Palestinian, who is the Zionist criminal, shouldn't be in this election. And this is a form of extreme democracy to know exactly what the big data is so advanced, and also mining big data is so advanced. You could have an election and know exactly what your population is thinking, or the population is going to get sick at some point and resort to these kinds of extreme forms of democracy. We get, instead of burning the monuments or bringing down Confederate statues, they're just gonna just elect a government, even though physically it's not out there, but the government will be virtual, but that's the government because it was elected democratically in a very extreme form of democracy. Well, the technology is there, but also another incident that was very interesting is that many I think it was Antifa or other black groups that had taken over like inner cities or inner government structures. Well, this can happen to Capitol Hill, that some faction of U.S. population will just coup d'etat, and the physical form or the representative of the U.S. government could be there and they go into the office, but the government itself has been surrounded and has been taken over in a physical sense, or taken over virtually, where there is election and they just get rid of these guys. Well, I think this concept can happen with, say, for example, the blacks in the United States decide that we are going to secede, but we're going to do it like virtually. There could be internal black government, but physically the blacks will be everywhere, but the government will be this, will be virtually elected in an extreme democratic form, but physically the Trump will be in power, but I don't know what happens after that. Might not be civil war, might be civil discord to an extreme extent, where they can U.S. government that's now in charge can make many rules and regulations, but who's listening? Who's obeying them? Civil disobedience or discord, which is kind of close to civil war. This can go on with other nations. I had a video, it was called Shadow Nations All Around Us, and this can go on. This government, which is now in power, the Trump, is a government similar to the 50s or 60s governments, and it just doesn't belong to our age. It's really the white minority, have annexed political power. But this can change. Uh, well, there is a lot of different topics in this that I could go into. I've been going through them with my other videos. Uh, there is a video called "When the Gatekeepers Died." When, for example, the U.S. government makes tariffs, makes immigration laws, but the technology, the virtual meeting and email, the technology has become so overpowering that these rules and regulations of city-state, they are kind of like meaningless because say you were buying Sony or tape recorders and they put 900% tariffs on them from Japan. Well, then you're gonna buy it from Vietnam or from North Korea, or this is the same stuff, and it's the world superseding and quashing any kind of immigration, any kind of economic policy, any kind of monetary policy that the fascist state enacts, and they just do their own. Well, we could talk about recent event. The Federal Reserve is pumping all this money into 5, 6 different stocks, FANG stocks, and pumping up the stock market. Well, the undercurrent is that there are thousands of smaller companies that they're going to get whacked, or they have gotten whacked, or gotten out of business, and they don't have the kind of pull or economic prestige that would induce Federal Reserve to come in and pump money into them. So they are actually succumbing to economic forces of deflation and deflationary collapse. And so those parts of the stock market are actually collapsing, and but it doesn't look in their totality. It doesn't look like nothing has changed, but a lot has changed. Same goes with, say, for example, the Federal Reserve pumps zillions of dollars into FANG stocks. Well, these companies, they're mostly companies that are based on servers, they're based on computer systems, and there's nothing special about these things. There are companies like eBay or what's the other one that sells a lot similar? I think I'm getting old, but they're gonna find stiff competitions. For example, Alibaba can replace many such companies. Same goes with Netflix. There's nothing special about what Netflix does. Another company in Hindustan can buy a bunch of servers and load up with old movies or new productions and just stream them everywhere. Uh, well, the US can pump as much money as it wants into Netflix, but then deflation will go on. There will be other companies similar. So what I'm trying to tell you is that the economic forces and technological innovations and changes that are happening all around us, and mostly in foreign countries, because they don't oppose these changes, these innovations, is so overwhelming that it's gonna quash any kind of policy or thing that the Federal Reserve might do, or the Trump administration might do. Well, I think this is a kind of hard concept to see for a lot of people, but kind of look into it a little deeply, and you see I do have a good point. Well, if you understand my ideas, my lectures, I think you should really wonder why you don't have your own PhD. And please subscribe and click like button. And I am human. I do like women and I do like money. I like medals too, like getting some kind of prestigious award or stuff like that. Well, these things might help me, like academically, become teacher somewhere. Get more time in the club room. Thank you very much for your time, and please don't be shy. Leave your comment, and we'll go from there.